Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's ACE webinar. It's great to have you with us. Tonight, we are joined by two presenters, both from Smart to Move. And if you aren't aware, both of these gentlemen will be joining us at the upcoming Golf Summit in 4 weeks' time to talk a bit more about ground reaction forces and also about Smart to Move in general. So if you haven't already got your ticket for the Golf Summit to see these two gentlemen, I highly recommend doing it off the back of tonight. So we have John Paul Fernandez, who is the CTO and sports scientist of Smart to Move, and we also have Gregory Lebrat, who is the CEO and co-founder of Smart to Move. So we're very lucky to have these two on tonight. They're very passionate about golf education. And tonight in particular, they're going to take us through a bit about what data you should be measuring first when you look at having a client on your force plate, the order of correction, and also take us through a couple of drills. So thank you to everyone who submitted some questions before. We will get to them towards the end of the session, but as we go along, if there is anything that you'd like to ask, please just put it in the chat box and we can ask our two presenters as we go along. But with that, I'd like to say welcome to John Paul and Gregory. It's great to have you on the webinar tonight. It's also going to be great to have you in Australia in a couple of weeks' time. So let's do it. Let's get started. I'll let you guys go through.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Joshua. Good evening, good morning for us. We are early in the morning. It's 11 o'clock here in Switzerland. So thank you very much for joining to that webinar. As Joshua just explained, we will be in your beautiful country in a couple of weeks. We're extremely excited to be at the PGA, Australian PGA Golf Summit in Melbourne next month. But before, thank you for the opportunity, Joshua. We're going to cover, as say Joshua, order of correction. We're going to try to be as simple as possible if you're not familiar with ground reaction forces. Anyway, there is probably, Joshua, a question and answer somewhere. We are not familiar with WebEx. We're using Zoom. Anyway, if you got any question, Joshua will be the moderator for today. This webinar should be between 45 minutes and an hour time. And then we can let you go back to your dinner. I think it's 7 o'clock here in Australia, depending on where you are. All good? Smart to Move, who we are, people call us the force play company. We are the only one force play company in the golf industry that manufacture, design hardware, software, and also education. We are in the business since 2015, and we have a customer, we have stopped counting, but over 35 countries with a dedicated sales team in Europe, United States, Southeast Asia, Japan, China, and we are hiring at the moment in Australia because that's why we are coming as well. We are looking to develop your country as one of the biggest golfing countries, 3.5 million golfers, I think, in Australia. So it's quite large, same amount as in Europe, actually. So we have developed a couple of partnerships over the year. Of course, we integrate. This is the only hardware we did not design. I have it behind me. This is a Kistler force plate from gold standard in ground reaction forces measurement, also based in Switzerland. We're also conducting research. Jean-Paul Fernandez, Smart to Move CTO and first employee of the company back 10 years ago. He's managing actually a software team and also research and development department in the company. So we are constantly every year conducting research and development in order to improve our model and our products, of course, and the data we are providing to the golf professional and the players. We do integrate TrackMan exclusively in our software, which means that we have the cause and effect, but we will cover that later. We're extremely happy after a little bit over almost 10 years to be partnership with several federations and PGA, especially in Europe, but some all over the world as well. You probably heard about Sky Sports. We're extremely proud of that. Jean-Paul conducted that project since over 4 years now. But if you've got the Flux from Sky Sports, it's actually on the UK Sky Golf. They have weekly our force plate, the big one, live streaming every week on the television. At Smart2Move, we have 3 types of force system, and again, we all invite you to visit us at the PGA Golf Summit next month in Melbourne, Australia. We got a 1D force plate. This is the first product we bring to the market back in 2015 that measure vertical force. We have a 3D research grade. We call that the RS, Research and Studio, which is a big babies from Kistler back behind me. And the last product, which is, I will say, our best seller actually worldwide, we bring to the market the first fully portable, fully wireless 3D force plates that you can carry in the plane, travel with it, you can hook it, you set up in less than 30 seconds, but we will cover those information in a couple of seconds. I'll let you go through that one, Jean-Paul.
If you want, you already said everything about the product, but very quickly. Welcome tonight anyway. I did not say hello, so hello to everyone. So the 1D force plate, it's only measuring the vertical force as you explained. It's a force sensor technology, it's not pressure, so much more accurate. We measure individually left foot and right foot. You can get the center of pressure and the data relative to your own weight. We don't measure the force in Newton, we measure it in Newtons, but we give that as a percentage of body mass, so that lets you the possibility to compare light or heavy people, because if you apply 1.5 times your body mass, you get the same force to move yourself. It's a wireless system working on an iPad, a very intuitive and simple app. It's the same app with the 3D portable system. But this one's slightly heavier, but still very easy to carry on a carry-on luggage. You can also measure horizontal forces, so left, right, front, back, and by doing that, you can also get the torque, that means the rotation around the vertical axis forces. So that's very interesting. Same, 2 force plate, one for the left foot, one for the trail foot, lead foot. Same app, just more information and get the vectors in 3 dimensions. So you're really starting to understand what happens between the force and the body. Since last year, we also have a kinematic system. That means we've got the body tracking, so you can see your body stickman and the forces acting on it. We will cover that just after, but it's very interesting to look at this to understand the motion. That's what you can observe on the bottom right picture here. But yeah, we integrate TrackMan. We've got the vectors versus the body and when the center of mass is, which gonna get a lot of effect on what you're doing. You've got the video with the data. We are actually working on development to add some more video views on the same app and still with wireless technology. So it's going to come very soon. And you've got different ways to see the data. You can get very deep and scientist way, but you've got very simple ways after as well. Not looking at only graphs and numbers, which are complicated, but very easy way to see. The last product, which is the research in studio product. I mean, this requires PC, cables, external camera, but it's gold standard in the industry. Most of universities and laboratories in the world are using Kistler force plates. That's the one we have, but we develop a specific software as well for golf. So if you're really fancy about research and you really need to go into very, very small details and get huge capacity of measurement, this product is made for you. But it's not the same price, it's not the same practicality, but it's very gold standard for what you can measure with it. Our system can be embedded into the different facilities. You can get just different possibilities there. The beauty of the portable system is that you can get indoor and outdoor use, even on the course, on the practice, on the grass, on the ground, at your home, depends where you go. The big system is normally standing on the same place and don't move. But you can get something very beautiful and get the ground level with your force plate in a perfect setup.
Alors, why do we use force plate? Again, some are probably familiar with ground reaction forces, some not. So we're going to try to be as accessible as possible. Why do we use force plate? The first thing is force plate help us to detect and fix. And to be honest, personally as a golf professional since 1998, in 2024, almost 25, as a golf coach, we fully need to understand what creates the cause and the effect in order to create the change. That's the big change in the past decade. We have access to so many information, so many content now online, especially through social media. I won't qualify if some information are correct or not, but anyway, this is our job now to provide the best and most accurate information to our students in order to improve their performance, let's say instantly. As I said previously, we integrate exclusively TrackMan technology in our software, and we like to say that the force plate measure the cause, the roots of the problem, and the TrackMan measure the effect, club delivery and ball flight data. If you use in 2024 both technology combined, it's gonna be really hard to guess on what's happening on the player. The other thing is why we are using force plate. It's an amazing tool, and especially the product we have designed. Again, as a golf professional, back over 10 years ago, when I say Jean-Paul, I mean, and to be honest with you, I was much more educated on pressure than force at that time, and that was a big challenge to present and talk about force at that time back 10 years ago. But now everybody's talking about ground reaction forces. Say since the past 12 and 24 months. Yeah, it's an amazing tool. You can use it on the tee. You can measure the player, and it allows to see what force the player has generated. And now with our new product in 3 dimensions, lateral, rotational, and vertical force, plus the torque. It will also help you to understand how every player is moving in a specific way. We are very happy to show those videos because TPI is using our technology as well. As you know, and this is what we used to say a couple of decades ago, we used to teach the same things, or most of everyone used to teach the same things to everyone. Unfortunately, it's not the case. We talk about individualities. If you look at a Lexi Thompson, at a Rory McIlroy, if you look at a Angel Cabrera or Bubba Watson, they're all swinging in a different way. They're all agree, or Dustin Johnson, all grip the club in a different way, which make them generating force in a different way or different magnitude than other players. So that's very important to identify those specificity. Great things, and we have our sister company, and we will show you that in some probably already own some of our training heads. We have developed, for example, a force parallel train for dynamic. We got new product on ground reaction forces coming for the PGA show next year. I mean, we are all teachers here in that webinar, and you all know that. Yeah, most of the case is the drills we are prescribing to our student. Is it beneficial? Does that create a change on the effect? The cool thing is with the force plate, we can test that in live. Does the drills or used by any type of training heads, does that create a change? Does that create an effect on the player performance? And we can test that in live mode and immediately, instantly with the player, with your player. The cool thing is that we have a live mode, so we can work, as I explained before, with the drills. We can, oh, there is a cut, Jean-Paul.
Yeah. That's yours.
Okay, it's perfect. You can test any type of drills, I mean, specific drill on ground reaction forces. Also the drills that connect the hand to the club. As we like to say, there is 2 connections in the golf club, in the golf swing, your hand on the club and your feet on the ground. And believe it or not, they are both interacting to each other. You got some of great coach covering that subject on the right hand grip on the club, actually, such as Mike Adams, for example. The great thing, and that completely changed my life personally as a golf instructor, it helps you to measure things over the time. Of course, you can do that with the TrackMan. You can see the effect, the change on the effect, club face, and color of attack. But you definitely see the invisible. We like to say force create motion, force precede the motion, and force are invisible. So what you think is happening under the feet of the player is sometimes the opposite. And that's extremely valuable to use force plate in order to create those changes. As you can see here, and that's the latest release of St. Jean Paul. We are measuring. We got an easy dashboard. We also have the courbe. Jean Paul will cover that later in the presentation. But since now April, we got the Stickman in 2D view with the frontal torque, as you can observe now, with the vector and the center of mass on the video. We will present that because that should be released around mid of October. We're going to have multi-camera. Our software app will be available on MacBook Pro and with up to 3 cameras wireless with your iPhone. And 2025, we expect to have a 3D body tracking in 3 dimensions with all of those cameras.
Thank you, Gregory. If you want to know what's the performance in golf is where the ball is landing. If it's in the hole, then you make the job. But the way the ball is landing is linked with the fact the way the club will hit the ball. So this is why you need to measure with a launch monitor how the club arrives and what is given as data to make the ball fly. The club moves because you move it in space. And you move it in space thanks to the connection between you and the grip and the club, which is the ends onto the club. The ends are moving in space thanks to the capacity of your muscles to generate a motion and move into space. And your muscles can be activated if they can push on something hard, which is the ground. So in reality, there's a direct connection between the performance, the motion you can generate, and the ground reaction force you will manage. What is exactly the ground reaction forces? The definition is the force exerted by the ground on a body in contact with it. Everybody can think that if you want to jump, what are you doing? You're not going up yourself. You're pushing to the ground, and the ground sends you back the force in the opposite direction. So the ground reaction force is measured by the force plates. That means that depending on the type of ground you're having, it will change the ground reaction force you can get. Everybody can imagine that if you jump from a soft surface or from a hard surface, you're going to jump less high with a soft surface because a part of the force you put in the ground is lost in the deformation of the ground and it's not restricted to you. But anyway, even if you put the same force on it, you will get less. If you want to move to your right side or to your left side, you will push in the opposite direction. If you want to move to your left side, everybody is pushing to his right foot in that direction, and the ground will send the ground reaction force in the opposite direction. It's the same for the rotations. If you want to turn, I mean, you maybe saw some videos or even try yourself. If you try to make some rotation or a golf swing on some very slippery area or even worse on ice, you'll see that you can generate the rotation by having your feet gripping with the ground or not gripping, unfortunately, if you're in a very slippery area. So in fact, that means that we can manage your balance and almost any motion you can generate with your segments thanks to your interaction with the ground. That's why measuring ground reaction force is very crucial. As Gregory mentioned earlier, it's important to make the connection between the causes, the forces, the motion, the first effect, and the consequences at the end, which are the TrackMan numbers with the club delivery and the ball flight. So in one mapping image, you can detect what's happening for everything in your ground reaction force interaction, how the body moves, and what are the consequences onto the TrackMan and the ball flight data. What can you measure onto a force plate? We can measure what we call the center of pressure. If you go on the top right side here, the small dots, blue dot is linked with the left foot, red dot is linked with the right foot, and yellow is the combine. The COP is where you apply the force below your feet. Okay, so when you see that the dots are moving, they're moving and show the pattern how you manage your balance and where do you push off from your feet. Then you can see the forces in 3 dimensions. That means you can see from right, left, front, back, up and down, and another one which is the rotation around the vertical axis. So thanks to the force plate, you can measure it and you can know how much force you apply in the different directions. And you can know how much rotation you generate in horizontal plan. So the force plate gives you all this information. Where do you push under your feet? Which direction with which magnitude? Here is the simple view, as we said earlier. If you don't like to see graphs and curves and numbers, there's a simple way to look at it there. It's just showing how much you push laterally. So when the bar goes more bigger or smaller, that means you push in that direction. Up and down is the same. Or the circle in the middle shows as well if you generate some rotation, bad or good rotation. Okay, negative or positive rotation as well. So very small use of the app helps you to understand what happens there. Lateral forces and displacement, rotational forces and displacement, vertical forces and displacement. There's a recipe to use the force plates, and this is always the same. There's 4-step process is made by, first of all, looking at the timing. You want to be sure that you generate the forces at the correct timing in a downswing. The second thing is, where do you apply the force below your feet? That's going to get a great and important influence on your capacity to generate a good motion. Third point will be the magnitude. How much force are you able to apply onto the ground? And this quantity will generate more or less motion, and in the consequences, more or less club head speed. And finally, which is more technical, the curve shape. You can see many things on the curve shape, but it's really covered in our level 2 certification. So I will just go quickly over it today. Let's have a look first at the timing. The kinetic sequence, okay, it's the order of the forces happening from the ground. This is universal. I mean, 100% of good players doing a good swing have the same order. The first peak of force you can measure is the peak of lateral force, which is made by the brown curve here and the brown high value you can see. Okay. The second one is the rotational force, and the third one is the vertical force. Every single good swing has always the same sequence: lateral, rotational, vertical. Okay. The kinematic sequence is the capacity to get the hips accelerating in rotation, shoulders and hands can be different with different players. Phil Cheatham has measured that 70% of PGA Tour players are respecting this sequence, but 30% are not. Meaning that normally you've got the hips accelerating first, then launching the shoulders, then launching the wrists. But in fact, 70% of PGA Tour pros players respect that, but 30% are not. Does it mean they're not good? Probably not, because they're on PGA Tour. But it means it's not universal. When you look at the ground reaction force, it's universal. Any single player has the lateral, then rotational, then vertical peak-up force. And if you don't have this order, you have to change it first. That's the first thing to change to be sure that you can build a strong structure for your swing. What's causing and when happens the lateral peak of force? It happens around the transition, when the club is changing direction. Okay. If you look at the yellow arrow here, it's pointing toward the front lead hip, and the center of mass is probably on the back here. So the effect makes that there's a rotation in the frontal plane, motion of rotation. It's not the entire body going it, but that's what makes the club changing direction at the top. So the fact you've got peak of lateral force, get all the arrows aligned and pointing at the target, make that you've got this effect onto the body that the club will change direction. Depending on the length of the backswing, depending on the length of the club, of course, you can get it earlier or later and with more or less magnitude. If you go very far away, you need more force to do it and probably start it earlier. If you have very short backswing and short club, you probably do add it later on and with less amplitude. But anyway, that's when the peak of lateral force occurs. We consider that lateral players should have at least 20% of their body mass at the peak of force. But not everyone is lateral player. We've got lateral players, we've got rotational players, we've got vertical players. It's not any problem there. You just have to respect that if you're a lateral player, we expect to see that this force, your primary force, should be over 20% at the peak. The second effect of the lateral force is to help to shift the body from the trail leg to the lead leg. Not to the lead, but trail to the lead leg, okay? If at the top swing you're a lot on the right side, of course, you need to get your body shifting toward the lead leg, so you're going to get high lateral force as well. If you're already on the lead side at top swing, you will need less lateral force. So that's the effect of lateral force. Remind that the force preceding the motion, so that's happening at that time to get the effect onto the motion just after. Okay, you generate the force that will create the motion, so you see the effect in the motion just after seeing the peak of force. The second peak is the peak of rotational force. This should occur between the lead arm 45 degrees above the horizontal and the lead arm horizontal. That will help to bring the club and the ends from your back to the front. That's the first action it does. The way you can generate this force is by getting your right foot, having the right hip pushed to the front and get the left hip pushed to the back with your feet. So you see the two different arrows pushing in opposite direction here. That generate the rotation around on the horizontal plane this way, like the helicopter view you can see. So the first effect is to bring the hands and the club from back to front. More the club is flat, more force you will need. More the club is steep, less force you will need. And the second action of the rotational force is to make your body turning as well. So that will help to generate the rotation of your hips, then your shoulders, and finish by the ends. That's why it's happening very early here, because then you're going to see the acceleration of hips, shoulders, and club to get the maximum delivery there. If you are a rotational player, that means your lower body is primary force rotation, you expect to see that your number should be over 85% or Newton meters at the peak force. So that's the yellow value you can see here. Okay. If you're not, of course, you don't expect to see that numbers. The last one, the force we have is the vertical force. This force also happens before impact. Remind that the force precedes motion. So you will get the force. It's going to be delivered through the body into the motion to get the effect onto the club before impact. If you do it at impact, the time it's been delivered to the club, it's too late. So all the peak of forces have to be before impact when you do a full swing. The peak of force should occur between the lead arm horizontal and the shaft parallel to the ground. Okay? That's the good window to get the peak of force. That will help to accelerate the club head down toward the ball, toward the ground and the ball, and that will help to provoke the wrist release and posturing up at the same time. This peak of force, if that's your primary force, is expected to be over 165% of your body mass. So once again, you see there's the value here, and you've got small dotted lines in our graphs. These dotted lines are threshold. So we can see that this player is far above the threshold, meaning that he's using a lot of vertical force, for example. Let's have a look now at the different issues with Gregory you can expect or see with the different timings.
So look at that data. that has been taken last year actually at the Swiss Open in Grand Montana. That was 2 weeks ago. If you can observe, I'm sure you remember what say Jean-Paul. Every player is using a combination of lateral, rotational, vertical, and vertical force. The timing of the lateral should happen about transition. Remember what Jean-Paul say? I mean, the lateral force causes the body to shift from the trail to the lead foot. So if you look at that player, Jean-Paul is circling the red curve at the peak lateral. You can see that the peak lateral force is happening about left arm parallel to the ground for this player. So it's a fact that this player is about 28, 30 handicap. She was a first level of golf player. Let's call it like this. So as everybody can imagine, this player understand. This player got a late timing for the peak vertical force. There is 2 reasons for that. And I'm sure some of the teachers here in the audience will recognize themselves because I used to teach that way back few decades. Oh, a little bit more than 10 years ago, I probably keep saying that before using force plate. We used to teach that at the top of the swing, we used to say ring the bell. Okay, so that's what we see visually on the video. But remember, force create motion and force precede the motion. So what you see on the video isn't a consequence, it's an effect on the force generated to the ground. So in that situation, we have a player that ring the bell instead of pushing laterally to make the club changing direction, which create that late peak of force. So there is simple drills. There is very simple drills such as the step drills. I will cover the drill anyway later, such as the step drill. That's a very easy way for the player to feel that change. So you can imagine that if the peak lateral force is late, the peak rotational will be late, and the peak vertical force will be definitely late, which was the case on that player. And that was a data measure with the Czech Federation, Czech PGA, excuse me, in Prague. I think this player was above 120 miles per hour club head speed. And if you can observe, look at the data. Jean-Paul gonna go to the peak rotational, which is the second peak. Anyway, the peak rotational was definitely too late, below left arm parallel to the ground, which brings as a consequence a late peak vertical force as well. So here on that situation, that was an interesting case. We generally have, as you also have your favorite drills and you know you will fix the problem with those drills, we probably, with Jean-Paul, we probably use 5 different drills until we could fix the problem with that player. But without force plate, it will be definitely impossible to identify that the peak rotational is late. Again, the peak rotational is the consequence or the effect of both feet pushing in the opposite direction in the downswing, which creates an object to turn positively toward the target, or negatively as well in the backswing. But here in that case, we are talking about the peak vertical force in the downswing. Oh, this is Agathe, ex-tour player, actually, which is national coach for the women at the Czech Republic. Look at her peak vertical force. I mean, we don't have to study science to understand that the peak vertical force, which is here in that situation, which is combined both feet pushing into the ground, is happening definitely too late. So that is something we are measuring a lot. So generally, when we use our training heads, the force pedal, which we use on that one, we can help the player to feel the correct point of application, but also time the peak vertical force that should happen again between left arm parallel and shaft parallel to the ground. For the long hitter, and for those knowing Smart to Move, we have in our advisory team and education team, we have Jason Zubak, 6-time world longest drive champion, that has measured a bunch of long hitter. Those animals, let's call it like this, have a peak vertical. Everything is happening earlier than for everyone, actually. But in that situation, for Agathe, she's definitely too late. And you have to imagine that a late peak vertical force is same as playing basketball like this, pushing and trying to throw the ball at the same time. We have some players, they have a peak vertical force that happening even after impact, which is like playing basketball, throwing the ball and jumping later. So We have, I don't want to exaggerate it, but we have probably thousands of data on that case on the vertical force. When you fix the timing of the vertical force earlier, generally you increase 3 to 4 miles per hour immediately with every type of player, and sometimes more on some other.
That's exactly what happened with Agathe. As soon as she's +3 or +4 handicap, so it's top elite player. But as soon as we fix that, just changing the timing, she just earned between 3 and 4 miles an hour with her high run. So that's changing the game, and you cannot say this player is not a good player. So just measuring it, you can observe it, you can change it. The second ingredient of the recipe, once the timing is good, is to look at the point of application. Okay, this means where do you apply the force below your feet, especially when you generate the maximum peaks of force, peaks of lateral, peaks of rotational, and peaks of vertical force. The first thing that everybody can feel it as well, if you stand on the ball of your feet or if you stand toward your heels, you will not feel the same muscles in action when you do, for example, a squat. Everybody can try. You stand on your heels, you stand on the ball of your feet, you make a squat, and you feel, oh, I'm doing knee flexion, hip flexion, ankle flexion, but I don't feel the same muscles involved. So depending where you've got the point of application, where you've got the pressure under your feet, that will change the muscles you can recruit and use. The second thing with the point of application is your axis of rotation. As we are right-hander, we've got a dominant eye. As we've got 1 foot to kick, 1 foot to stay, 1 foot to turn, we've got some preferences. And there's one which is called the axis of rotation. Some people are stable and comfortable by turning around the trail hip. Some people are more comfortable turning into between the two hips, and some people are more comfortable and strong by standing on the lead hip to turn. These three types of axis of rotation will determine your lower body action, your primary force. If you turn around the trail hip, that means you stand a lot on the trail side, and you will need to move from trail to lead foot at the top swing. So we know your primary force will be the lateral force with the lower body action. If you are more in between the left and right hip, that means we are in the middle, you are centered, and we know this is perfect to make some rotational force. So your primary force will be much more the rotation. And if you turn much more around the lead hip, naturally, okay, we expect to see you using much more the vertical force because this is where you're going to be stronger. It's very important to determine which is your rotation axis. Because when you're at top swing, if you're not in your natural and stable rotational axis, you're not stable, you're not ready to use your muscles to generate a lot of force. So that's what is causing most part of time the fact you can get the peak of force late. Imagine you should normally turn around the lead hip, but at top swing, because you learn it, because you saw that on the magazine, you try to stand on the trail. The time you go from the trail to the lead, it's too late to be able to generate a lot of force. And the time you arrive on the lead leg when you're strong, the club is already too low, and you're going to apply the peak of force far too late. Okay, so this is crucial to understand that your natural axis of rotation will determine if you're more trail, middle, or lead foot. This will have an influence on the way you can get your center of pressure moving. If you're on the trail foot, you're going to get a motion which is much more lateral and going from right side to, or trail side to lead side. And the feet will probably roll inside like that. And your center of pressure is quite flat and moving a lot. On the contrary, if you're more a rotational player, you expect to see that you're going to do what we all know, which is heel, toe, toe, heel motion and rotating around the central axis. And if you're much more a front lead leg axis rotation player, you're going to stand much more on the lead leg and you're going to stay on the ball of the feet to generate much more rotation by pushing up and down like squatting or jumping instead of doing the other ones. Nothing is wrong as long as it's matched with your own physiology and your own body. So once you get that, you respect that, that helps to change the timing, you get a good point of application, and then you can use the good muscles to do it.
So the point of the lead foot point of application is universal. It's toward the ball of the lead foot. I mean, this is, I will say, this is the first. I mean, let's say it like this: in 2024, any golf coach in the world, if they identify that issue, they need to fix that immediately. If you don't load toward the ball of the lead foot at peak vertical force, two things going to happen. You're going to increase the fatigue and the risk of injury of the player, short term, long term. And the second thing, you will decrease the transfer of energy from the grounds up to the club. That's a fact. There is enough study, enough data collected on that point. That's I call that a professional mistake in 2024 if a golf teacher or golf coach is not fixing that. That's even much more important than fixing the grip. Even if the grip is important because it's related to the ground force, but that's not the subject today. The second thing is look at the point of application on the trade foot. That's not the subject that is today, but this is what we are covering in our level 2. We have so many persons saying toe to heel. And of course, toe to heel, this is what's happening. But generally, we see too many people lifting up asking their player to lifting up the right heel, so engaging the calf, which is not optimal on that situation. When we say toe to heel is in biomechanics and physiology speaking, and we have Jean-Paul here as a sports scientist to correct me if I'm wrong, we call that the middle of the trade foot. So the middle of the trade foot is actually the heel part. So don't ask your player to go straight on the heel. This is not what we want. When we say toe to heel, this is the middle of the trade foot. And regarding the lead foot, everyone in 2024 need to load toward the ball of the lead foot because you're going to engage the extension muscle. And as you have the kangaroo in Australia, you are very good in sport. We had the Olympic game. Have seen no athlete in the Olympic game jamming from the heel. They're jamming from the ball of the lead foot in order to extend the rest of the body and maximize the transfer of energy, especially at basketball, volleyball, for example. This is the optimal placement, as you can see on that video, on that picture, sorry. Toe to heel, ball of the lead foot, not on the toes, just a little bit before, because nothing is happening on the toes. And for the trade foot, toward the middle of the trade foot.
That's what you observe for rotational player.
Yeah, that's what we observe mostly for rotational player. Yeah, correct, Jean-Paul. The trade foot point of application may vary if you're lateral dominant, rotational, or vertical player. And the low body action as well. This is one of the common issues we see, and this is Agathe, the previous data. She did not only have at the peak vertical too late, but she had the point of application that was definitely at peak vertical toward the lead heel. Let's say it like this. So you can imagine that's not optimal. So generally that mistake, and this is a common mistake, it's common mistake at the top of the backswing. We have players, they are starting rotating. So they're basically killing the lateral force, which make them loading toward the lead heel. It's a very simple things to fix. It generally take 1 drill, 2 drills, if the player don't feel it, and increase of 3 to 4 miles per hour immediately for most of the players we have in our database with that issue. And as everybody know here, because I'm sure everybody has been educated on launch monitor data, 1 mile is about 3 yard carry. So I let you imagine the smile on the face of the player when you fix that. Here is a South African tour player measured in Zurich last year. You can see here the peak vertical force. So here we got the individual force. What showed Jean-Paul was the sequence. Max peak force, lateral, rotational, vertical. Here you can see that, of course, we want the player to load max toward the lead foot. That's why the blue curve is higher than the red curve. So blue curve belong to are the data for the lead foot and a red curve for the trade foot. And the yellow is combined from both of them with the correct point of application on this one. Because believe me or not, sometimes we have reverse. That doesn't happen a lot, but we have the red curve higher. So the player is loading more in the downswing of the trade foot.
Yeah. Thank you, Gregory. So we have seen the two first ingredients, which are the timing that has to be correct, and then the point of application. Once these both are correct, you can go to the next one, which is the magnitude. You never work on the magnitude until the two ones are not fixed, because if the timing is off, and even worse, if the point of application is not good, you can injure your players. So as soon you're safe on that, good timing, good point of application, then you can work on the magnitude. And if you're more lateral player or more rotational player or more vertical player, this is where you can start to pump up the numbers and make your player pushing more into the ground, generate more motion, and as a consequence, be able to generate more club head speed. So as we said before, lateral player, you expect to see 20% of your body mass minimum. That's a threshold we measure with thousands of players, elite players from amateurs and professional. And we know that it's referred to your own mass. So if you want to get an efficient use of lateral force, you should get more than 20% if you're a lateral player. Same for the rotational, we expect to see a threshold over 80 Newton meter mass. You can consider it as percentage. And same for the vertical, we expect to see over 165 if you're more lead foot rotational axis and vertical players, low body action, sorry. The common issues?
Yeah, so the common issues is we are the point of application, timing of the force, magnitude of the force. If you look at this player, which is actually the #1 player in the Czech Republic, she don't want to play on tour. She want to be a doctor. Good for her. If you look at the data, I don't know if you can zoom, Jean-Paul, a little bit on the data, or if everyone can see the number. Hopla. Yeah.
I've been too fast, sorry. I can't zoom.
You cannot zoom. Okay, it's no problem. If you look at the magnitude at peak vertical force, so the timing of the vertical is good. It's happening before impact at left arm parallel to the ground with the correct point of application toward the ball of the lead foot. So far so good. Everything is perfect. But if you look at the magnitude onto the lead foot, it's 94, I think, Jean-Paul. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. And look at the club head speed, 80. Oh, thank you very much. 96. And you got 88.1 club head speed. So look what's happened just by using the force pedal. So the goal of the force pedal, we have designed training heads with different density, a soft one that is orange and a yellow one that is firmer. So basically simulate the kick, the pushback from the force pushing you back from the ground. So look at the change by using the force pedal, asking the player to squeeze the force pedal at peak vertical force. She basically increased from 94 to 111, and she had an increase of club head speed of 3 miles per hour immediately. We didn't change anything in the swing. There was nothing to change. Timing was perfect. Point of application of the force was perfect. We tried to increase the magnitude, so the quantity of force generated into the ground here on the vertical force, and as an effect, 3 miles per hour plus. So sometimes there is nothing to change. The timing is good, the point of application is good, but by using simple drills, we can we can increase the quantity of force here on the vertical force lead foot, and the player increase club head speed.
The last ingredient, which is the dessert, but that's a big piece of cake. We cover it a lot in the level 2. But if you want to go deeper and starting to look at the numbers, the curves, you can get many information with the curve shapes. You can see if a curve is fluent, or much more jiggling. This will reveal if the motion is controlled, over-controlled, or maybe get an injury or something like that. Something very smooth means it's natural and easy to reproduce. It's ballistic. Every time you can see some changing in the curves, that means there's something not normal, or there's something blocking, or there's something you can probably improve. Okay, so this is the first thing you can see. Of course, you can look at the max values, but you can also see how you maintain a high value during long time. That's what we call the impulse. It's how much force you apply through times. If you push a longer time, you're going to get more motion. So this will give you the capacity of a player to generate a lot of or not a lot of motion and his capacity as well to generate it fast or not fast. We covered that in level 2. We go much more into details, but you can see much more than what you can expect only with force plates in the capacities, in the muscular capacities, coordination, control. I mean, there's so many things you can observe with it. So it's just a quick example there, but yeah.
Regarding the impulse, Joshua, we have a nice webinar on our website, but I mean, we have another biomechanist with Jean-Paul in the name of Tyler Standifield in the US. I mean, this is a subject that can be a webinar only on that topic. It's very interesting.
Absolutely.
Forced by the time, yeah.
So as we said before, since few months now, we've got a stick figure, so a body tracking system. You can observe that now you've got the ground reaction forces and a stick man here. And you can see there's a circle around the center of mass, the green dots. And this shows if you are generating rotation away from the backswing in the frontal plane or toward the backswing during the on the frontal plane. This is great because bigger is this circle, more motion into downswing or backswing you can generate. We actually only give the quantity by visual circle. Bigger is the circle, more rotational force you're generating. A gray circle means you're doing backswing force, and yellow circle means you're doing downswing or toward the target force. So at the start of the motion, you've got a gray circle to initiate the motion toward the backswing. During the downswing, you've got yellow circle again, and a bigger one just to make it accelerating. And during the finish and the follow through, you get again some gray because you need some braking action to make the club slowing down after the motion. So this is a great vision and great way to see how much rotation in horizontal plane with the graphs and how much in the frontal plane with that relation between center of mass and that. Once again, this is something which is covered in a webinar as well. So on our website, we've got a specific webinar explaining all of that with Dr. Tyler Standifield.
Let's cover some drills to finish the webinar. Are we on time, Joshua, so far?
Yes, we're doing perfectly.
Okay. Any questions so far in the question and answer?
I've got a few questions, but we might wait till after the drill section.
Perfect. So I'm going to try to go as fast as possible on the drills.
No problems.
So for the drills, we're using, of course, our training aids, force pedal, train for dynamic. We use also band. You can use kettlebell and other speed training stick or club, which help us to coordinate the upper body with the lower body, which is extremely fundamental with now the center of mass that we measure on our software. So I'll let you go to the next one, Jean-Paul. The first one I will say is one of my favorite. I mean, if you can hook bend to engage the core, and you can have different distance with the medicine ball, the goal of that drills is first timing of the vertical with the proper point of application. By adding tension, by moving forward, you're gonna engage more the core. That's gonna help you to stabilize and also reduce what we call early extension. Again, there is some degrees of early extension during the swing, but what the definition, and Jean-Paul has shoot last week in Vienna, the Austrian Federation, a great video on that. It's the fact of the pelvis coming toward or closer to the target line. So that drills avoid or reduce that tendency by engaging your core and help you to time the vertical force with a proper point of application toward the ball of the lead foot. You can repeat exactly the same with the club, because as you know, by adding a 1 to 2 kilos medicine ball, that's going to even engage more the core muscle. But by the club, definitely trying to time between left arm parallel or shaft parallel to the ground, give the proper feeling of the vertical force timing. And generally, that will help to time the other force depending on what the issue is. Can go to the next one, Jean-Paul. This drill is very simple. I mean, everybody has seen Mr. Molinari a few years ago doing that at the driving range at the Masters. So we call that explosive squat load D-weight drills. So basically this is a great drill. There is some lag on your video, Jean-Paul, actually. This is a drill that we recommend to every coach to do at the end of the session. Maximum 3 to 5 swings. So it's basically load, time the vertical. In my situation here, I'm trying to go shaft parallel to the ground for personal reason, but it can be left arm diagonal or left arm parallel to the ground. And then the goal is to, again, same as the last one, feel the proper point of application, timing of the force, and then help the player to feel the weights. Remember, when you load into the ground, the curve goes up to the max peak force. When the curve goes down is when the player, when the ground push you back, so the player de-weight himself. So that's avoid what we call double peak. Sometimes we have a double peak on the graph. So by doing those drills, same thing with the medicine ball, you increase the magnitude of the force for sure, but you maximize the timing before impact with a proper point of application. Is the video working, Jean-Paul?
Doesn't want to play, sorry.
There's no problem. So for the medicine ball, we do recommend 1 kilo to 2 kilos. Don't try to go higher, you may injure the player. And for the junior, yeah, you can go a little bit less than 1 kilo, depending on the physiology of the player. So that's exactly the same drills as before, but with a medicine ball anyway. The difference on that one, but again, that's not the subject today, the placement of the right hand, depending of your right hand grip. If you're more under or on top with the right hand, you have to place it on top, side on, or under. And as I told you before, there is 2 connections in the golf swing, the hand on the club and your feet on the ground. It's simple to understand that when you place your ball under, you're going to generate more lateral force. If you're positioning side on the ball, you're going to be more AP force, rotational. And if you put it on top, you're going to have less lateral displacement, and which gonna help you to maximize the vertical force. We don't see the presentation anymore, Jean-Paul.
Yeah, that was locked. I'm trying again.
There was some jet lag on the presentation. Apologize.
That's the drill.
Again, most of the drills, you can find those drills. We have covered a couple of webinars. We have tons of video if you're following us on Instagram, on YouTube as well, on Smart to Move. But we got our sister company, Bioforce, with the force pedal. We got tons of drills on Instagram, mostly, but you can see a couple of videos with Jason Zubak, actually. We have shot, we have a library of 150 drills, actually, on ground reaction forces, and we have shot probably only 50. Same drills, as you can see. You can imagine that when the lateral rotational is late, generally the vertical is always late. So the first thing and the most easy for a player is to fix as a feeling from experiences, is to fix the vertical force. So that's a drill with the Taiwanese Federation with Mike Adams a few years ago. It's a tough one. Again, when you use overspeed training, be careful about that. Swing the club fast. I don't want to say it's a tough one. It's accessible for everyone. But again, once you try to swing fast, you want to make sure that you're loading toward the ball of the lead foot. So always combining overspeed training with the proper point of application toward the ball of the lead foot. Very important. We got different drill because you can imagine, you remember when Jean-Paul were talking about AP force, which create the vertical torque when both feet are pushing in opposite direction. And that's a subject in another presentation. We like to see both feet, the AP force data, pushing at the same time in opposite direction. For different reasons, generally it's physical or technical. When it's technical, is a stance too wide or foot flare open or too square. We see both feet not pushing at the same time. So this type of drills that you can see with or without medicine ball help the player to to coordinate both feet pushing in the opposite direction, but also help them to clear the vertical, because the AP force and the vertical force help to make the clearing of the vertical force. That's why it should happen before the vertical force, actually. That's proprioception drills in the middle that we use with the T40. We got Jan Digwall that's working on the European Tour. It's in Wentworth, actually, which is an advisor with us. And the video will be released in the next 2 weeks, actually. We got 50 drills on the T40 to work on balance proprioception. If you want the definition of proprioception, ask a biomechanist, ChatGPT or Google. It's a tough one on that one, but basically, to make it simple, we are trying to make the player training, we are trying to make the brain of the player training in a different environment to help him to increase his performance. And the last one on the right, with the band, I mean, hook up that was here in the simulator, and try to help the player to feel left arm parallel to left arm diagonal to the ground at peak vertical force. So those ones are very simple to execute. Once you have a force plate, you can instantly check if that drill, the drill you have prescribed, is beneficial for the player. You also can have a discussion with your student and say, look, I have give you that drill that doesn't work. I mean, we need to find another solution because you don't change the consequence, the effect. Thank you very much, everyone. We have said a couple of times at the beginning, but we're extremely excited, actually, to join you guys and the PG of Australia at the Golf Summit next month in Melbourne. And if you have any question that you want to ask today, we are happy to answer your question in a couple of weeks on the booth.
Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen. We are very much looking forward to having you both in Melbourne in a couple of weeks to build on what you've just presented there. And if anyone was going to the Golf Summit and wants to catch up with Gregory or John Paul, they'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. But we do have a couple of questions based on tonight's presentation that I'm hoping you can quickly go through. The first question is, how do you change how you work with a student based on their orientation of their feet or their legs? So for example, if the client has an open stance, or if they're pigeon-toed, duck foot, if they have bowed legs, or it could be an all abilities athlete who has potentially one leg longer than the other. So how do you make I guess a decision of what to measure and what to change based on the data you're seeing from different types of clients?
Alors, very simple. As I said before, issue can be physical or technical. So you have in the question, there is some physical issue and some technical issue. So this is the terms rules. Remember, for the vertical force, when it's happening late, the first thing you want to check, we know that a player that is flaring, that has no matter what the degrees of flaring on the lead foot, we know that by reducing the lead foot flaring, we'll make the vertical force happening sooner. Okay, we know that a stance width, too large or too narrow, will affect the low body action. Some going to be more lateral, more rotational, and vertical. We know that also the stance width combined with different type of foot flare, that will affect the AP force. The fact that the player both feet are not pushing at the same time, which won't maximize the quantity of torque, which is a fundamental element to increase vertical and club head speed. So that's the terms rule generally. Then to the physical part, I'm only a golf professional. I have a chance that my wife is a physiotherapist. She's American. She has worked with a couple of great tour players. Jean Paul is a biomechanist. I got access to those persons. When it's physical, and this is my recommendation, make all your players get screened. If they have a TPI certification or not, if they are physiotherapists, if you can have in your team, in your pool, in the golf or outside of the golf, work relate to someone that can assess the physical limitation of your player. Sometimes we are trying to fix things that is impossible because the player got physical limitation and mobility. And then I'm gonna let answer Jean-Paul about the feet, which is a podologue stuff, orthopedic stuff.
I'll go very quickly, but everybody is different and you've got to respect individuality, of course.
Yeah.
So if you've got longer leg or different hips opening or whatever, you've got to see what is natural and what will first not injure the player. Because an injured player is something that doesn't play, doesn't make money for the pros, or doesn't make money if he's a professional player. So respect the natural way and then find a way to optimize his capacities, respecting his physiology. That's the main principle there. And then you can invent any drills, any type of training. This is the beauty of biomechanics. Adapt to everyone.
Good advice, John Paul. The best type of ability is availability, isn't it? So
Yeah.
make sure that we're looking after all of our clients. Another question about peak pressure, in particular on the trail foot, and from your data, what have you found is the ideal, I guess, peak pressure when it comes to the 3 different shots of pitching, irons, and the driver?
On the trail legs or lead legs?
On the trail leg.
Okay.
Or we can go through a bit of both.
Okay. Let's Joe generally, and we have shot a video last week on that topic. We generally say, and this is what we say today, but that was for the long game, and Jean-Paul mentioned that as well. And was mentioned the peak vertical force should happen before impact between left arm and shaft parallel to the ground, because we are in a ballistic motion. The goal is to generate speed, so we need to use the ground. On the short game, and we have done that multiple times, we know that from 10, 20 yards or meters from the target, as long the closer from the target to the longest, the away from the target, we know that the peak vertical force will be before impact, to slightly at impact, or before impact. The main reason is because on short game, we control the club by the upper body. I recommend you, if you know James,
Yeah.
not James 3 yards, with TPI, with Matthew Tipper. I knew you work with Matthew Tipper as well, probably. James Suckling.
James
No, James Suckling is the one. Then Sigman, yeah, the Suckling is for the wine. James Sigman, I remember a few years ago in a presentation at Oceanside, he was talking about the reverse kinematic on short game. This is exactly the case for the peak vertical. The closer for the target, the more you're gonna try to control the club with the upper body, the less you're gonna need speed. You're gonna need to use the ground to generate speed. So that's the first. That's the first answer for the timing of the vertical. For the point of application or pressure on the trail foot, that may vary. I say, Jean-Paul, if you're much more on the lead foot, if you're stack and tilt or those kind of train, you're gonna go less on the right foot in terms of pressure, and it's also related to the stance width. Then the point of application will also vary according to your low body action. If you're a rotational player, lateral player, or something rotating upon the front axis. That's another presentation with Jean-Paul, where the line of pressure, which link both center of pressure, will be more diagonal or less diagonal. This is the reason I mentioned before on the trail foot. The point of application may be different according to those facts. If you have something to add, Jean-Paul, on that one.
I mean, even if you have long game, short game, iron drivers, you've got a pattern, and normally you respect this pattern. It's with more or less amplitude, earlier or later, earlier with long clubs and later with short clubs and short shots. But normally you are about the same capacity to repeat it. The only different thing is if you do long driving, then you've got a specific pattern, specific motion. But for your game, normally it's quite similar and you respect the same things. I mean, that's the same body doing the motion. So there's no reason you're doing so many different things between short game and long game.
And final question for you, and it's just to touch on what you mentioned there. You do a lot of work with Jason Zuback. What kind of patterns are you seeing with him that makes him hit the balls so long compared to a lot of the other touring pros?
There's two main things we can observe. First of all, is his capacity to reproduce the same motion almost every time with very high forces. And his second capacity is to use, he's very efficient. He's not generating huge forces that are lost into non-efficient motions. So most of the force he's using is to make only the good segments of his body moving at the right time and transfer into club head speed. You can generate a lot of force, but if you lose that force to move your pelvis, move your shoulders, don't move the club, you generate a lot of force, but you don't use it to move the club. He's very efficient in his capacity to reproduce the same way, using a lot of force, and most of this force is used to make the club moving properly and not the entire body. So that's what you observe with very high level elite players in drive.
Great. Well, thank you for answering the questions, Jean-Paul and Gregory. And on behalf of the PJ, thanks as well for tonight's presentation. We are very much looking forward to having you both present at the summit next month and be down in Australia. So if anyone did want to know some more information, please jump on the Smart to Move website. As mentioned tonight, there's plenty of webinars and education tools on there. So make sure that you have a look at them. And if you haven't already done so, register for the Golf Summit so you can hear these two build on what we've learned tonight. So thanks again, gentlemen, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
And yes, thank you very much, Joshua, for that opportunity again. We look forward to be with you guys next month. With Zorby, Jean-Paul, and myself, we're going to have a small booth. We're going to have our force plate. You can go on a website, write us a comment on contact, and book a time. I think the time from the show is from 8:30 to 5 o'clock every day. But feel free to book a time and say, oh, I would like to meet you guys at 10 o'clock. We're going to have our force plate. You're going to have the possibility to try them. So that's going to be cool. And they accept our visa yesterday, actually. So it's cool.
Excellent. We're definitely seeing you in 4 weeks' time.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Joshua. Thank you.
Thank you very much
All right.
for all.
Thank you, guys. Good evening.
We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Ciao.